All right, I'm going to go ahead and start part 2 of the review. So the first couple of questions is asking us to evaluate each expression using the order of operations. So it gives you a clue right here by giving you PEMDAS, which stands for parentheses, and then exponents, multiplication and division, and remember that those go from left to right. There's not necessarily one before the other. And then the same thing with addition and subtraction, from left to right. I'll draw a little arrow to help you remember. Not necessarily multiplication before division. If division comes first, you'll do division first. So we're going to start over here on number 1, and I'm just going to go through the order of operations. So I start with parentheses, and there's no parentheses, so I'll skip to the next thing, which is exponents, and there's no exponents. So then I have multiplication and division from left to right. But if I look at this, there is no multiplication, there's just one thing of division. So the first thing I'm going to do is 5 divided by 5, which is 1. So now I have 6 plus 1 minus 1. So now I'm on to addition and subtraction from left to right, so I can just solve this problem from left to right. So I'm going to do 6 plus 1 is 7. Now I have 7 minus 1, which is 6. So in this case, the answer is A, 6. So then we'll move on to number 2. So this one does have parentheses. Now when there's 2 sets of parentheses, you want to do the most inside parentheses first. So I'm going to start with 1 plus 1, which is 2. So then I have 14 minus 2 divided by 4. And then my next set of parentheses is right here. So 14 minus 2 is 12. So now I have 12 divided by 4. And 12 divided by 4 is 3. So in this case, the answer is B. And then on to number 3. Numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6 all kind of deal with the same thing. We're switching between radical form and exponential form. So as a reminder to you, and this was in Unit 1, so we have this nice formula that helps us do this, where we have x to the a over b, we can rewrite as the b root of x to the a. So whatever number is in your denominator becomes your root number, and whatever number is in the numerator becomes your exponent number. So if we start here with number 3, this denominator is going to be my root number, so I have 5, and then my root, and I have n, and then the 3 is my exponent number to the 3rd. So I have the 5th root of n to the 3rd, which right here is letter A. And then on number 4, I use the same idea. So the 3 is my root number. And then I have my 7n. And the reason I have the entire 7n in here is because this is in parentheses. So the whole thing is to the 2/3. If this looked like this, then only my n would go in the radical and my 7 would stay on the outside. But because of these parentheses, the whole thing is going to go under the radical. And then my numerator becomes my exponent, so I have the 3rd root of 7n squared, which is letter D. So then we have numbers 5 and 6, and I'm going to use this same tool right here, except I'm going the opposite way. So I'm going to put whatever's the root number in the denominator and whatever's the exponent in the numerator. So I'm going to start right here, and since this whole thing is under the radical, I'm going to have a 7x in parentheses. And then my numerator is my exponent, so I have a 5 right here. And then my denominator is my root number, but this doesn't have one. So remember, this is a square root when there's nothing there, so this is a 2. So this is 7x to the 5 over 2, which is letter D. Number 6 is the same idea, so I'm going to have my 10p in parentheses. And then my numerator will be this 7. My denominator will be this 4. So I have 10p to the 7 over 4, which is letter B. Numbers 7 and 8 deal with exponent rules, and this is also Unit 1. So far we've done everything we've done has been from Unit 1. And we probably need a quick refresher on what all the exponent rules are. So I'll go ahead and do that over here. So we have x to the a times x to the b. So if I have two things with the same base and they're being multiplied together, in order to simplify this, I add the exponents. So I have x to the a plus b. However, if I have x to the a to the b, then this is equal to x to the a times b. And then there's always the possibility of having a fraction, x to the a over x to the b, and in this case I subtract the exponents. So I have x to the a minus b. And then I need to remember that x to the 0 power is always 1. Anything that I put to the 0 power equals 1. And then the last thing is if I have a negative exponent of any kind, then that's going to move to the denominator. If it's already in the denominator and it's negative, then it will move to the numerator. So these are the rules I'm going to use as I solve numbers 7 and 8. And I'm still going to follow the order of operations as I use this rule. So I've got to start with the innermost parentheses, exponents. So I have 2 to the third and x to the third. So 2 to the third is just 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. And then x to the third, this is like x to the first, and 1 times 3 is just 3. So this is just x to the third. Now I have that times x to the 0. And then this whole thing is squared. But just like I said over here, anything to the 0 power is equal to 1. So this is like 8x cubed times 1, which is just 8x cubed. And then that is being squared. So now I can do just what I did on the inside over here. I need to do 8 squared and x to the third squared. So 8 squared, 8 times 8 is 64. And then to simplify these exponents, I just do 3 times 2, like this rule told me right over here. And 3 times 2 is 6. So I have 64x to the 6th, which is letter A. And then I have number 8. So again, I have to do exponents first. Well, parentheses first, but the parentheses are as simplified as they get. So then I move on to exponents. So I need 3 squared and x squared squared. So 3 times 3 is 9. And then I have this 2 times this 2 is x to the 4th. And then this is still times x. And with nothing here, this is like x to the 1st. So using this first rule I listed up here, when I'm multiplying two things with the same base, I add their exponents. So 9x to the 4th times x to the 1st, I just add 4 and 1, and I'm left with 9x. 4 plus 1 is 5, which is letter B, 9x to the 5th. All right, so then we're going to move on to adding or subtracting these polynomials. So the first one I'm adding, and the biggest thing to remember when you're adding and subtracting polynomials is you can only combine like terms. So you can't combine something that's x to the 4th with something that's x squared. But I can combine something that's x squared with another thing that's x squared. So I'm just going to start on the left-hand side, and I have 6x to the 4th. But there's nothing else that's x to the 4th, so my 6x to the 4th is just going to stay by itself. And then I have this negative 7x squared. And this is also an x squared, so these I can add together. So I'm going to do negative 7x squared plus negative 5x squared. And negative 7 plus a negative 5 is a negative 12x squared. And then I still have this 5x cubed, so I'm going to have my plus 5x cubed. So now I've combined everything I can combine, and I just need to rewrite this in standard form. And standard form goes from the highest exponent down to the lowest exponent. So I'm going to start with 6x to the 4th, then have my plus 5x cubed, and then my minus 12x squared, which if I look over here is option D. On number 10, I do the same idea, except now I'm subtracting, which is really, really important to remember because I have to distribute this subtraction to both things in parentheses over here. So I'm going to start on the left again, and I have 6a to the 4th, and this 8 is also an a to the 4th. So I'll start by doing 6a to the 4th minus 8a to the 4th. And 6 minus 8 is a negative 2a to the 4th. And then here I have a negative 7a to the 4th minus a negative 6a to the fourth. Now when I minus a negative, that is the same thing as adding. So I have a negative 7 plus 6. So negative 7 plus 6 is a negative 1a to the third. And now this is the same as negative 2a to the fourth minus a to the third, which is option B. Next, I'm going to multiply polynomials, and we've had a lot of practice with this because we've done it on several assignments. So if I come down to numbers 11 and 12, number 11, I need to distribute to everything. So I'm going to start with 4n times 3n, which is 12n squared. And then I have 4n times 6, which is 24n. And then negative 2 times 3n is negative 6n. And negative 2 times 6 is a negative 12. So then I can just combine these two because they're like terms. So then I have 12n squared plus 24 minus 6 is 18n minus 12. And if I come over here, that is option C. Number 12 is the same idea. I've got to distribute this 5 to both things in parentheses. So I'll start with 5 times 3p is 15p, and 5 times 2 is 10. So I have 15p plus 10, which is C. Number 13 and 14, I'm factoring. So I've got to go through every step of factoring. So this is our most recent unit, unit 7. So starting on number 13, my first step of factoring is to put it in standard form, and it already is in standard form. My second step is to see if there's a greatest common factor I can pull out, and it doesn't look like there is. There's not a number that goes into 1, 5, and 24. So then I move on to step 3, and I want two numbers that multiply to AC, which is 1 times a negative 24, so that's negative 24. And we need it to multiply to that and add to B, which is 5. And in case you don't remember how you know what A, B, and C are, A is the number in front of your x squared, so a 1. B is the number in front of x, so 5. And C is your constant on the outside, which is a negative 24. So now I'm going to go ahead and think of two numbers that multiply to negative 24, but add to 5. So if I think of factors of 24, I have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. So the only numbers that I can think of that I could combine to be 5 would be 3 and 8. So now I just need to figure out which one should be negative, and I think the 3 should be negative because a negative 3 plus 8 is a positive 5, where a negative 8 plus 3 would be a negative 5. So I'm going to go ahead and use these two numbers as the numbers to group. So I'm going to split this 5x up into negative 3x and 8x. So I have x squared minus 3x plus 8x minus 24. So all I did in that step was instead of putting my 5x, I put negative 3 plus 8, which is 5. I'm just simplifying it out so that I have something to factor with. So then I can group each side. So I'm going to group this side and group this side and pull out the greatest common factor from each side. So on this side, each of these has an x. So I can take out an x, and then x squared, if I take one of the x's out, I have 1x left. And then a negative 3x, if I take an x out, I have a negative 3. And then on this side, I can take out an 8. So I have an 8, and then 8x without the 8 is just an x, and then a negative 24, if I divide that by 8, is a negative 3. So now I know I'm on the right track because this parenthesis matches this parenthesis. So I'm going to pull out what's in parentheses. So I have an x minus 3. So then this is gone, and I'm left with x plus 8. And if I look in my answers over here, I have right here, I have an x plus 8 and an x minus 3. So my answer is C. And I will do number 14 in the next video because I'm almost to 15 minutes, which is the limit on videos.